I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. I used to think my life was as solid as it could get. Married to Marcia for 12 years, with 2 kids, Emma, 8, and Jake, 6, I thought we had it all figured out. I had a good job in IT, working long hours but providing for the family. Marcia worked part-time at a local accounting firm. Our life was simple, comfortable. At least, that's what I believed. The first sign of trouble came like a flicker of doubt, easy to dismiss if you wanted to. Marcia started staying late at work more often, always with an excuse. There's a new project, or I've got to cover for someone who's out sick. At first, it made sense. I knew her job wasn't easy, and I trusted her. We'd been through a lot together. College sweethearts, married young, worked hard to build a life. I didn't think for a second she'd betray me. But as the weeks turned into months, something changed. She was on her phone constantly, always texting someone. If I asked about it, she brushed it off. Just work stuff, she'd say, like it was no big deal. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband who snoops through his wife's phone. I trusted her, didn't I? Besides, we had 2 kids to worry about, bills to pay, and life moved on. One night, things shifted. I had a late project for work, something that needed to be finished by morning. I set up my laptop in the living room after the kids went to bed. Marcia had gone upstairs, saying she was tired. But she'd left her phone downstairs, right next to me on the coffee table. I tried to ignore it. I knew it wasn't right to check her phone, even if I had a bad feeling in my gut. But something gnawed at me. The phone screen lit up silently, like it was taunting me. A message had popped up, just sitting there, waiting to be read. I glanced at it without thinking. "Can't wait to taste you again tomorrow, baby." I froze. My heart hammered in my chest, the blood rushing to my ears. My fingers trembled as I picked up the phone, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. The message was from someone named N from accounting. N. Accounting? My mind raced. Who the hell was N? My eyes burned as I stared at the words, unable to comprehend the betrayal right in front of me. I couldn't just sit there. I stormed upstairs, my feet barely touching the steps. Marcia was lying in bed, scrolling through some book on her tablet like nothing was wrong. I stood there, seething, trying to control the urge to shout. "Who the hell is N?" I demanded, holding her phone out in front of her like it was evidence in a trial. Her eyes widened, and for a split second, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then, just as quickly, she tried to recover. "What are you talking about?" she said, her voice shaky. I threw the phone onto the bed. The message, Marcia. The one from Hen in accounting. "Can't wait to taste you again tomorrow." What the hell is going on? She started to cry, the tears coming faster than I expected. But they weren't the kind of tears that come from guilt. They were tears of someone who had been caught, someone who was scrambling for damage control. "It's not what you think," she sobbed, her hands shaking as she picked up the phone. "It's not serious, David. I swear, it's not serious." Not serious. My mind reeled. Months of late nights, unexplained absences, and vague excuses about work clicked into place. The puzzle was complete. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "How long have you been lying to me?" She couldn't even look at me. "A few months," she admitted, her voice small. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." Rage boiled in my veins, but beneath that was a deeper pain, a kind of heartbreak I had never known. We had built a life together. How could she tear it apart like this? "Why, Marcia?" I asked, my throat tight with emotion. "Why would you do this? Wasn't I enough?" She wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. "I was lonely," she said. You were always working. You were distant. I needed someone to talk to, and it turned into something more. Her words cut deep. I had been working hard, trying to provide for our family. I thought I was doing the right thing, but in her eyes, it wasn't enough. She had turned to someone else for the attention she thought I wasn't giving her. I didn't know what to say. There were no words for the betrayal I felt. I left the bedroom and spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My thoughts raced, and the pain in my chest made it hard to breathe. Every memory I had of Marcia, the good times, the laughter, the love, felt tainted now, like it had all been a lie. The next morning, I confronted her again. This time, she didn't cry. She just sat there, staring at her coffee cup, as if the answer to all of our problems could be found at the bottom of it. I want to make this work, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For the kids. We can try counseling, right? We can fix this. But the truth was, I didn't know if I could fix it. I didn't know if I even wanted to. The trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. Still, for the sake of the kids, I agreed to try. We went to counseling. We did the date nights, the forced conversations about our feelings, but none of it felt real. The damage had been done. For 6 months, we lived in this miserable limbo. Every time her phone buzzed, every time she was late coming home, I wondered if she was still talking to him. She promised she wasn't, but how could I believe her? The trust that had once been the foundation of our marriage was gone, replaced by doubt and suspicion. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. One night, after another fight about God knows what, I told her I wanted a divorce. She looked at me, her eyes filled with defeat. She didn't fight it. She didn't even cry this time. Maybe she had been waiting for this moment, too. The divorce was ugly. Marcia fought me on everything, custody, the house, even the dog. She hired a lawyer who dragged out the process for over a year. Meanwhile, she moved in with her affair partner. The man she had betrayed me with was now playing house with her and my kids. But I stayed focused. I fought for custody and, in the end, I won. The judge saw through her lies and gave me primary custody of Emma and Jake. Marcia got visitation, and a decent settlement to start her new life with her new man. I kept the house and did my best to rebuild what was left of my shattered world. For a while, it seemed like Marcia had gotten everything she wanted. She had her new man, a new condo, and the freedom to live her life however she pleased. I focused on my kids, on healing, and on moving forward. Then, last night, everything changed. A few months passed after the divorce was finalized, and life settled into a new kind of normal. I wasn't the same man I had been before, something in me had hardened. Maybe it was the betrayal, the months of living with suspicion, or the gut-wrenching process of letting go of a 12-year marriage. But I had my kids, and that gave me a purpose, a reason to keep going. Emma and Jake were adjusting, too, though it wasn't easy for them. They didn't fully understand why their mom wasn't around as much, why she only saw them every other weekend. I tried to explain it in the gentlest way possible without bad-mouthing Marcia. She was still their mother, after all. No matter how much pain she caused me, I had to be careful about how I spoke about her in front of them. But the kids were smart. They knew something had broken between us, even if they didn't know all the details. Life became a routine of school drop-offs, work, and trying to be the best dad I could be. I kept busy with work, but it wasn't the same. There was a cloud hanging over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something vital had been lost. I threw myself into taking care of the house, making sure the kids felt safe, even when I didn't. But every night, when they were tucked into bed, the silence hit me like a wave. I'd sit there in the quiet, staring at the empty side of the bed where Marcia used to sleep. Even though I was angry, even though I had made peace with the divorce, there were moments when the loneliness crept in, and I found myself wondering what went wrong. How had we gone from being college sweethearts, so in love, to this? How had she drifted so far away from me without me even noticing? One night, after a long day at work, I was scrolling through my phone, mindlessly checking emails, when I saw a picture pop up on social media. It was Marcia, smiling, standing next to her affair partner, the man who had taken everything from me. They were at some fancy restaurant, drinks in hand, her arm wrapped around his waist. The caption read, "Date night with my love." I stared at it for a long time, my chest tightening with that familiar ache. Even after everything, seeing her with him still hurt. But then, just as quickly as the pain surfaced, something else took its place. A cold, bitter anger. She had moved on, hadn't she? She had torn apart our family, destroyed everything we built, and now she was living it up with her new man, while I was here, picking up the pieces, raising our kids on my own. I slammed my phone down on the counter, the rage building in me like a storm. How could she just walk away from it all so easily? How could she be so happy after everything she did? It wasn't fair. I had been the faithful one. I had been the one who tried to make it work, who gave everything for our family, and now I was left with nothing but the ruins of a broken marriage. For the next few weeks, I threw myself into work harder than ever. If I wasn't at the office, I was at home with the kids, filling every hour with tasks, trying to drown out the anger that simmered just beneath the surface. But it wasn't enough. No matter how busy I kept myself, the bitterness lingered. Then, one night, out of the blue, the phone rang. It was late, 11 p.m., well past the time anyone reasonable would call. I looked at the screen and saw Marcia's name. My stomach twisted. I hadn't spoken to her outside of arrangements for the kids in months. What could she possibly want now? I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe old habit, made me answer. "David?" Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. "What is it, Marcia?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I didn't want to feel anything for her anymore, no anger, no sympathy. I just wanted to be done with her. I need your help," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, I don't know who else to call." I sighed, already regretting picking up the phone. "What's going on?" There was a long pause on the other end. I could hear her breathing, trying to steady herself. It's him. "Nick," she finally said, naming her affair partner. "He's gone." "Gone?" I asked, my confusion quickly turning to suspicion. "What do you mean, gone?" "He left me, David," she said, her voice cracking with fresh tears. "He lost his job a few months ago and started drinking. Things got bad, and then he left. Took all our money. I don't know what to do. I'm broke, I can't pay rent. I'm going to lose the condo." I sat there in stunned silence, not sure how to process what I was hearing. The man she had left me for, the man who had destroyed our family, had bailed on her. Now she was coming to me for help. The twisted irony of it all hit me like a punch to the gut. "And why are you calling me?" I asked, my voice colder than I intended. "You've got to be kidding me, Marcia." "I'm desperate," she sobbed. "Please, David, I don't have anyone else. I need your help. Just until I can get back on my feet. For the kids' sake. For the kids' sake." She had the nerve to bring them into this. My anger flared again, hot and sharp. After everything she had done, she had the audacity to ask me for help. To come crawling back to me after she left me for another man. A part of me wanted to hang up the phone right there. To let her deal with the mess she had made. But another part of me, an older, softer part, remembered the woman I had married. The woman I had loved for so many years. She was still the mother of my children, after all. And as much as I wanted to walk away, a sliver of guilt began to creep in. But that guilt wasn't enough to erase the anger. I can't believe you're asking me this, I said, my voice hard. After everything you did, you think I'm just going to swoop in and save you? She was crying now, the sound of her sobs filling the silence between us. I know I don't deserve it, she said, her voice raw with desperation. I know I messed up. But please, David, I have no one else. I closed my eyes, trying to steady the storm brewing inside me. Every fiber of my being wanted to say no, to let her face the consequences of her choices. But as much as I hated her in that moment, I couldn't ignore the small voice in the back of my mind, the one that told me I wasn't that kind of person. But I wasn't a fool either. You expect me to just forget everything? I asked, my voice tight with anger. You expect me to clean up after you destroyed our family? No, I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, her voice breaking. But I'm asking you to help. For the kids, if not for me. The kids. She knew exactly where to hit me. She always did. I sat there, the weight of her words pressing down on me. The anger, the betrayal, the pain, it all swirled inside me like a storm. But in the end, I couldn't do it. I couldn't let her back into my life, not after everything. I'm sorry, Marcia, I said, my voice cold and final. But this is your mess to clean up. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it. And with that, I hung up the phone, my heart pounding in my chest. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a sense of closure. She was finally paying the price for her choices, and I didn't have to carry her burden anymore. As I sat there in the quiet, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking my life back. In the days following Marcia's desperate phone call, I felt an odd mixture of relief and resolve. The storm of emotions that had consumed me for months, the anger, the bitterness, the pain, was finally beginning to fade. It wasn't gone entirely, but something had shifted inside me. For the first time since our marriage fell apart, I felt like I was in control. Marcia had made her choices. She'd left me for someone else, built a life with him, and now that it had all crumbled, she wanted me to pick up the pieces. But I wasn't that man anymore, the one who always put her needs before my own. The one who tried to fix everything, even when it was beyond repair. She was on her own now, and I was finally free to move forward. Of course, the guilt still gnawed at me. As much as I tried to convince myself that cutting her off was the right thing to do, there was always that voice in the back of my mind, the one that reminded me she was still the mother of my children. I hadn't just cut Marcia out of my life, I had cut her out of theirs, too. And that wasn't a decision I could take lightly. A week after our phone call, Marcia texted me. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. There was a part of me that wanted to ignore her, to let her deal with her problems on her own. But I knew I couldn't avoid her forever. Not with the kids involved. What do you want? I replied, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. It's about the kids, she texted back. I want to talk about visitation. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I knew this was coming. With her life falling apart, she wouldn't be able to keep up her regular visits with Emma and Jake. I had expected her to cancel a few weekends, but it seemed like she was preparing for something bigger. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet her. We set a time to talk, and 2 days later, I found myself sitting across from her at a small coffee shop near our old neighborhood. It was the first time I had seen her in person since the divorce, and it was strange how different she looked. The confident, put-together woman I had once known was gone. In her place was someone who looked worn down, exhausted, her face pale and drawn. It was clear that whatever had happened with her and Nick had taken its toll. Thanks for meeting me, she said, her voice soft and strained. I nodded, waiting for her to get to the point. I'm not going to beat around the bush, she said, her hands trembling slightly as she wrapped them around her coffee cup. I can't afford the condo anymore. I'm being evicted. I didn't say anything, just watched her, waiting. I don't know where I'm going to go yet, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. But I don't think I'll be able to take the kids on weekends for a while. At least not until I figure things out. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. As much as I didn't want to feel sorry for her, a part of me did. She looked broken, lost in a way I had never seen her before. They can stay with me full time, I said after a long pause. Until you get back on your feet. She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. Thank you, she whispered. I really appreciate it. I didn't respond. It wasn't gratitude I was looking for. I just wanted to make sure Emma and Jake were taken care of. Marcia took a deep breath, steadying herself. I'm trying to find another job, she said. I've applied to a few places, but with everything going on, it's been hard. I could tell she was struggling to keep it together. The strong, independent woman I had once admired was unraveling in front of me, and as much as I wanted to stay detached, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. But I wasn't about to let that sympathy drag me back into her chaos. I had my own life to live now, and I couldn't afford to get sucked back into her mess. Let me know if anything changes, I said, standing up. But for now, I'll handle everything with the kids. She nodded again, tears spilling over her cheeks. I'm so sorry, David, she whispered, her voice breaking. For everything. I know I hurt you. I know I ruined our family. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Her words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. I had waited so long to hear those words from her, to hear her acknowledge the pain she had caused me. But now that she was finally saying them, they didn't feel as satisfying as I thought they would. The damage had been done, and no amount of apologies could change that. I know, I said quietly, meeting her gaze for the first time. But that doesn't change what happened. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. I understand. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the coffee shop, the weight of the conversation settling heavily on my shoulders. As I stepped out into the cool autumn air, I realized something. Marcia's apology, her regret, it didn't matter to me anymore. I wasn't waiting for her to make things right because there was no going back. The life we had was over, and I had already started building a new one without her. The weeks passed, and true to her word, Marcia didn't see the kids. I didn't tell Emma and Jake the full story, just that their mom was going through a rough time and couldn't take them on weekends for a while. They were disappointed, but they seemed to take it in stride. Kids are resilient that way. They adjusted to the new routine, and so did I. We settled into a rhythm. I'd get them ready for school in the mornings, help them with homework in the evenings, and on weekends, we'd spend time together, going to the park, watching movies, just being a family. I hadn't realized how much I had missed out on during the last few years of my marriage, how much time I had spent working, trying to keep everything afloat while Marcia drifted away. Now, it was just the three of us, and in some ways, it was better than it had ever been. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I sat down at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. I hadn't thought much about dating or meeting someone new. It wasn't that I wasn't interested, it was just that I didn't know where to start. The idea of putting myself out there again, after everything that had happened with Marcia, felt daunting. But as I sat there, sipping a beer, something changed. I wasn't the man I had been when my marriage fell apart. I had survived the worst of it, and I was still standing. Maybe it was time to start living again. I opened a dating app that one of my coworkers had recommended, set up a profile, and started swiping. It felt strange at first, like I was stepping into a world I no longer belonged to. But as I scrolled through profiles, reading bios and looking at pictures, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't just a divorced dad, picking up the pieces of a broken life. I was a man with a future, a man who had been through hell and come out the other side. Maybe it was time to start thinking about what came next. A few days later, I got a match. Her name was Allison, and from what I could tell, she was kind, smart, and funny. We started chatting, nothing too serious, just getting to know each other. It felt good, normal, even. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. As we exchanged messages late into the night, I realized that this was the first step. The first step toward something new. Something better. Marcia had taken so much from me, but she hadn't taken everything. I still had my kids, my life, and now, maybe, a chance at happiness again. It wasn't revenge I was after anymore. It was something much simpler, something I hadn't allowed myself to think about in a long time. As the weeks turned into months, life seemed to settle into a kind of peace I hadn't known in a long time. The kids were doing well. Emma had started soccer, and Jake had taken an interest in drawing, spending hours at the kitchen table with his colored pencils. The house felt like a home again, and I had even started seeing Allison, the woman I'd matched with on the dating app. Things were easy with her, no drama, no complications. She was kind and patient, understanding of my situation with the kids and the divorce. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could start over. One Friday evening, a few months after my last conversation with Marcia, Allison and I had dinner plans. It wasn't anything fancy, just a casual night out at a new restaurant she wanted to try. I had arranged for my neighbor, an older woman named Karen who adored Emma and Jake, to babysit for the night. After a quick dinner with the kids, I kissed them goodnight and headed out the door. The evening with Allison was perfect. We laughed, talked about everything from work to our childhoods, and for a while, I forgot about all the pain and betrayal that had consumed my life for so long. When she smiled at me, I saw something I hadn't realized I'd been missing: hope. Hope for a future that wasn't tied to the past. After dinner, we took a walk by the river. It was a cool evening, and the city lights reflected off the water, casting a soft glow around us. She slipped her hand into mine as we walked, and for the first time, I felt like I might actually be moving forward. "I'm really glad we met," Allison said, her voice soft. "Me too," I replied, squeezing her hand gently. "I haven't felt like this in a long time." She smiled, leaning her head on my shoulder as we walked. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't thinking about Marcia, or the betrayal, or the divorce. I was just thinking about the moment, about how good it felt to be here, now, with someone who made me feel alive again. Later that night, I dropped Allison off at her apartment and headed home, a quiet contentment settling over me. But when I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. Karen's car was still parked outside, which was normal, but the house was dark. It was late, but she usually kept the porch light on when I came home. I got out of the car, feeling a strange unease creep over me. As I approached the front door, I noticed it was slightly ajar, just enough to set off alarm bells in my head. I pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. The house was quiet, too quiet. My heart pounded in my chest as I moved through the living room, calling out, "Karen? Emma? Jake?" No answer. I rushed up the stairs, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I burst into Emma's room, empty. Then into Jake's, nothing. Panic gripped me as I ran back downstairs, my hands trembling as I grabbed my phone to call Karen. But before I could dial, I heard a noise, a soft rustling coming from the kitchen. I turned toward the sound, my pulse quickening. I moved cautiously, the adrenaline surging through me as I stepped into the doorway of the kitchen. And there she was. Marcia. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her back to me, staring at a glass of wine she had clearly poured herself. The sight of her hit me like a freight train. My mind scrambled to process what was happening. How the hell had she gotten in here? And where were the kids? "Marcia," I said, my voice a mixture of shock and anger. "What the hell are you doing here?" She didn't turn around at first, just sat there, running her finger around the rim of the glass. Finally, after a long, agonizing pause, she spoke. "I had nowhere else to go," she said, her voice quiet, almost defeated. "That doesn't answer my question," I snapped. "Where are the kids? Where's Karen?" "They're fine," she said softly. "I told Karen I'd take over for the night. She left a couple of hours ago." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had no right to be here, no right to come into my home, disrupt my life like this. "You can't just show up here," I said, my anger building. "You lost that privilege when you walked out on us." Finally, she turned to face me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "I know," she whispered. "But I didn't know what else to do. I've lost everything, David. I have nothing left." I stood there, my fists clenched at my sides, trying to keep my anger in check. I had spent months putting my life back together, piece by piece, and now here she was, trying to drag me back into the wreckage. "You don't get to do this," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You don't get to come back here and pretend like nothing happened. You made your choice." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "And I regret it every single day. I was stupid, David. I was so stupid." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The anger was too raw, too fresh. All I wanted was for her to leave, to get out of my life for good. "I want to come home," she said suddenly, her voice breaking. "I want to fix things, David. For us. For the kids." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. After everything she had done, after all the pain she had caused, she was standing here, asking to come back. The audacity of it was almost laughable. But before I could say anything, something shifted in her expression. A glint of something I couldn't quite place. "I know I messed up," she continued, standing up slowly. "But I've changed, David. I've realized what I lost. What we lost. I want my family back." I shook my head, disbelief coursing through me. "It's too late for that, Marcia. There's nothing left to fix." She took a step closer, her eyes pleading. "Please, just give me one more chance. I know we can make this work." I opened my mouth to tell her no, to tell her to leave, but something stopped me. A sound, a soft shuffle, coming from the hallway. I turned toward the noise, my breath catching in my throat. Standing there, just beyond the kitchen doorway, were Emma and Jake. They must have heard everything. Emma's eyes were wide, her face a mask of confusion. Jake was clutching his stuffed dinosaur, his small face scrunched in worry. "Daddy?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. I knelt down, my heart breaking at the sight of them. "It's okay," I said softly, pulling them both into my arms. "Everything's okay." But as I held them, I realized the truth. It wasn't okay. It wasn't ever going to be okay. Because in that moment, I knew Marcia wasn't here to make amends. She wasn't here because she had changed or because she wanted to fix things. She was here because she had nowhere else to go. She was here because she was desperate. And she was using the one thing she knew could break me, our kids. I pulled away from them, my decision clear. "Marcia, you need to leave," I said firmly. "You're not staying here. Not tonight, not ever." She looked at me, her eyes filling with fresh tears, but I didn't waver. I wasn't going to let her back into our lives, no matter how much she begged. And as I stood there, holding my children, I realized the real surprise wasn't that Marcia had come back. The real surprise was that I didn't need her anymore.